Well, as we've been telling you, of course, stocks surging following President-elect Trump's victory. Business and corporate leaders are also, of course, trying to assess what a second Trump presidency will mean for their businesses. Joining us here on the set at the New York Stock Exchange is Michael Lynton. He's the chair of Warner Music, also the chair of Snap, and the former CEO of Sony Entertainment. Nice to have you here, Michael.
Great to be back.
You were a Harris supporter, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any concern in the business community in terms of whether there'll be a backlash in some way against those who supported Trump's opponent?
I would hope not. I mean, the half of the country voted for Harris. The other half has voted for President Trump. And the hopes would be that whatever incoming administration deals fairly with both.
And what are your thoughts when it comes to what you can expect, obviously, both from the perspective of whether it's Snap or
I mean, less from the perspective of Snap and Warner Music and more in general, what you would hope for is some consistency in the policy, because that's what business likes to see. I myself am not somebody who's personally in favor of tariffs. I don't think that they're good for the country. I understand that President Trump is in favor of them, but I would expect that we'd see more of that. What I would hope to see is the ability to have an honest conversation into the future about what is good for the economy and what is good for the American people, and that a certain degree of transparency into that conversation would also be great.
I wanted to ask you about TikTok because I know you're involved with Snap. I mean, the last time around, TikTok was considered a target in the Trump administration, banning it. They still have this law that passed here in the United States.
Right.
We don't really know what's going to happen. I think it's in the hands of the Chinese government right now. But what is your expectation for what happens there and how it impacts a company like Snap?
I mean, I really don't know anything more than you know, which is that there's a law right now that says that come January, either they find a U.S. owner for it or it has to come out of the United States. To your point, that's a little bit up to the Chinese government. It's a little bit up to a judge because that still has to be seen by the court. I think that'll be decided by the end of the month here in November. But I don't know whether a change in administration makes a difference to the trajectory of where this is meant to be going.
We've been talking all morning about whether the results sort of redefine what's possible in M&A.
Right.
And I'm wondering how you think boards are thinking about that today.
I mean, my sense is that M&A will have a big uptick. There's in the current administration, obviously, there was a lot of scrutiny being paid to it from an antitrust perspective. Given what I've heard from this new administration, that there'll probably be a lot less scrutiny over those matters, and so as a result, there'll be a lot more M&A.
You think that gets offset by price, or are prices still in a neighborhood where you can plow ahead?
Prices are pretty high.
Yeah.
So, at some point, that will be a major consideration in any...
Although, I mean, you're a long time, obviously, member, so to speak, of the media industry. I mean, there's a lot of consolidation, conceivably, that is needed, particularly for those weaker players and or those that are in weaker parts of the industry.
Yes, and in that sector, they are not elevated, the pricing. So I could see, actually, that sector benefiting from all of this. Because you're quite correct. There needs to be consolidation. I think people were, to some degree, waiting to see what the outcome of this election would be. Because if Harris had come into the office, maybe there was less likelihood that those combinations would have been permitted. There is a good possibility that with the Trump administration, they'd be more likely.
I do wonder, entertainment is one of our bigger exports, so to speak.
Yep.
I mean, when it comes back to this tariff debate, is it a concern, do you think, or should it be in some way, that there may be tariffs placed on the exports from the U.S. by our trading partners?
You mean specifically into
Correct.
China, or more generally?
More generally, even. Given I think President Trump has talked about 10% across the board.
I think that's always a concern. Absolutely. There's a lot of content that's being made indigenously, whether that be in China, which is now over 50% of their box office is Chinese-made movies. Same goes for Europe. So I could see that having a big effect on the entertainment industry if there were that kind of a tariff.
What about just the way CEOs engage with a Trump White House? I mean, we learned a lot.
Yep.
During the years in 2016, they all joined his councils at first, and they, paraded into the White House, and then a lot of them had to drop out of the councils because of certain positions or policies. Like, what do you think is going on in those communications huddles right now about the best way to interact with the Trump administration, given everything we've learned?
I haven't had any conversations with anybody, given the fact this all just went down in the early hours of the morning. My suspicion is everybody's trying to find their footing. And to your point just now, I think there will be overtures, and then everybody will try and figure out what the dance looks like. Right now, it's not really knowable. certainly given what we saw in the previous administration, going back to 16.
Finally, just a question about artists.
Yep.
And how involved they got in this cycle. Whether that was Beyonce, Taylor, Kid Rock, Ricky Martin, right?
Yep.
I wonder, do you see them recalculating?
No, I think we've seen this happen in the past. I think it's wonderful to see people come out and support candidates. I don't think at the end of the day these celebrity endorsements really make a big deal of difference coming out of the music industry, Hollywood at large. That is not does not what the American people want to
I wonder if it's a
from.
turnoff.
There's a distinct possibility that it's a turnoff. Exactly right. That it feels elitist at some level and that people just don't want to hear that in their ear when they're trying to figure out who to vote for.
Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Michael Lynton.